This
Here you
meeting is
go.
being recorded.
Absolutely. So, hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you for being here. We're going to continue our discussion of Walt
Hey,
Whitman. Last week we talked about Song of Myself. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes, good. And now we're going to try to talk about two of his great, shorter but still long-ish poems, namely Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, and then the poem which is the most perfect poem he ever wrote, Out of the Cradle Endlessly Rocking. If you're not muted, probably please mute yourself because that means that the transmission works better altogether. So, first of all, I'll be more brief with Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, but it's a really beautiful and quite astonishing poem. Um, this was published, it was written in 1856. As I said last week, Whitman's one book of poems is um, Leaves of Grass, and it kept growing and being revised through edition after edition. So the 1856 edition is the second edition. And this is one of the important poems that was added for the second edition. Its first title was the Sundown Poem. And here we go. It's called Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. So I hope that you had a chance to read it because I'm not going to take time to read the whole thing. But this is, I mentioned last week that Whitman loved to travel back and forth on the ferry and on the trolleys and to hang out in Manhattan and to hang out in Brooklyn and to ride the trolleys and to hang out in the bars. And he just had like tons of friends. He was still doing journalism. He was writing reviews, including very laudatory reviews of his own poetry, which he was publishing. He's just amazing, such a character.
he
Um,
was writing reviews of his own poetry.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
How
Norman
does
Mailer,
that work?
oh, he anonymously. He just published them,
Oh, anonymously. Okay.
anonymously. Yep. So he was just really a character. Um, so this comes from his peripatetic life, his love of being on the water and crossing back and forth on the ferry that crossed the East River from Brooklyn to Manhattan, from Manhattan to Brooklyn. And okay, in Song of Myself, in section 33, which we talked about last time, he has these lines. He says, space and time. And then he says, now I know what I am for. I am afoot with my vision. Primarily, I think um, Song of Myself has to do with space. And we talked about some of the enormous spatial expansiveness of that poem, the catalogs where he's zooming all over the continent and imagining his way into different lives. Here is where he's really talking about time. And this is quite miraculous. So he starts out by imagining crossing the ferry toward sundown, facing west. Flood tide below me, I see you face to face. Clouds of the west, sun there half an hour, a high. I see you also face to face. And then he turns to address the people, not only on the ferry with him, but the throngs of people. And this becomes a metaphor for time, for life, for change, for process. The throngs of people crossing back and forth on this ferry daily, hourly, yearly, century wide, on and on. Crowds of men and women attired in the usual costumes. How curious you are to me. Curious is a beautiful word there. It not only means mysterious, it also, in its Renaissance sense, meant finely wrought, finely put together. So, how curious you are to me. On the ferry boat, the hundreds and hundreds that cross returning home are more curious to me than you suppose. So, this great praise and this great curiosity about the people. And now he starts zooming forward in time. And you that shall cross from shore to shore years hence are more to me and more in my meditations than you might suppose. I'm going to have to zoom forward a little just in the sake of time. Others will enter the gates of the ferry and cross from shore to shore. Others will watch the run of the flood tide turning toward the future. Others will see the shipping of Manhattan, north and west, and the heights of Brooklyn 50 years hence, and so on. And then he says, 100 years hence, ever so many 100 years hence. He's not thinking about the fact that that ferry isn't working anymore, and they built a bridge, but he's imagining time stretching forward, people passing back and forth through time, not only literally going from Manhattan to Brooklyn or Brooklyn to Manhattan, but traveling on this sea-laden journey of time itself. It avails not, time nor place, distance avails not. And now he starts saying, what I feel, you feel, just what you feel, I feel. You are refreshed by the river. I was refreshed. You stand and lean on the rail. So too I stood. And I too, many and many a time, crossed the river of old. And then he starts praising these beautiful things to see. Um, I saw the slow wheeling circles and the gradual edging toward the south, saw the reflection of the summer sky in the water, looked at the fine centrifugal spokes of light round the shape of my head in the sunlit water. One critic says, as if he's a divinity, he's lit up by this halo of light. And yet later he says, everybody will have the same thing, right? I looked on the sailors at work, the schooners, the sloops, the masts, the slender serpentine pennants, the large and small steamers in motion, the pilots, the white wake left by the passage, the quick, tremulous whirl of the wheels, the flags of all nations coming with shipping to this great port, Manhattan, the falling of them at sunset, the scallop-edged waves in the twilight, the ladled cups, the frolicsome crests and glistening, and it goes on and on, as in Song of Myself, with this great listings of things to praise, to see. These and all else were to me the same as they are to you. And now he starts speaking, and this is so interesting. He starts speaking in um, the past tense, as if he is, this is something that Emily Dickinson does too, as if she's not there any longer. In Emily Dickinson's case, it's as if she died. But in his case, it's as if he's speaking about the people in the future and saying, I too loved these things rather than I love them. He's speaking to us. He's speaking literally imaginatively to us where we are in time and reaching out. Keats in a late poem says, here's my living hand, I reach it towards you. And Whitman is doing the same thing. He's reaching towards you. The men and women I saw were all near to me. And then he says, I too lived. And you're like, well, yeah, you're 38 years old. I too lived. Brooklyn of ample hills was mine. I too walked the streets of Manhattan Island and bathed in the waters around it. I too felt the curious, abrupt questioning stir within me. I too, and here's a really important image for him, and this is going to point forward to Out of the Cradle. I too have been struck from the float, forever held in solution, which the float is the ocean. The float is eternity or time or, the womb, whatever you want to call it, non-being. And to be struck from the float is to be given identity and shape in a human form. This is a central metaphor for him. I too had been struck from the float, forever held in solution. I too had received identity by my body. And then a really important kind of darkening of tone for Whitman, which we didn't really see much of in Song of Myself. He says, it is not upon you alone the dark patches fall. The dark threw its patches down upon me also. The best I had done seemed to me blank and suspicious. My great thoughts, as I supposed them, were they not in reality meager? Nor is it you alone who know what it is to be evil. I am he who knew what it was to be evil. And you're like, whoa, Whitman, this is a different note here. I too knitted the old knot of contrariety, blabbed, blushed, resented, lied, stole, grudged, had guile, anger, lust, hot wishes I dared not speak, was wayward, vain, greedy, shallow, sly, cowardly, malignant, the wolf, the snake, the hog, not wanting in me. And then he comes very close, I think, to talking about his not so concealed homosexuality that he had really difficult feelings about. He said, I was called by my nighest name by clear, loud voices of young men as they saw me approaching or passing, felt their arms on my neck as I stood, or the negligent leaning of their flesh against me as I sat. Saw many I loved in the street or ferry boat or public assembly, yet never told them a word. Lived the same life with the rest, the same old laughing, gnawing, sleeping. Played the part that still looks back on the actor or actress, the same old role. The role that is what we make it as great as we like, or as small as we like, or both great and small. And then he changes again, turning to praise Manhattan, this beautiful, beautiful description of the river, the seagulls, the present time, coming back to the present time with his verb tenses. What can ever be more stately and admirable to me than mast-hemmed Manhattan? What is more subtle than this which ties me to the woman or man that looks in my face, which fuses me into you now and pours my meaning into you? We understand then, do we not? What the study could not teach, what the preaching could not accomplish, is accomplished, is it not? Accomplished through the poem, through the movement of the poem. And then section 9, I think, is just absolutely gorgeous. And essentially, it's a paean, it's a peroration. And what he's saying over and over and over is, so be it, so be it, so be it. So it's kind of blessing. Flow on river, all these imperative verbs. And he's just simply repeating what he already said. Whitman is a poet who repeats himself a lot, but generally in the great poems to really brilliant effect. Flow on river, flow with the flood tide, and ebb with the ebb tide. Frolic on crested and scallop-edged waves. Gorgeous clouds of the sunset, drench with your splendor me, or the men and women generations after me. Cross from shore to shore, countless crowds of passengers. Stand up, tall masts of Manhattan. Stand up, beautiful hills of Brooklyn. Throb, baffled and curious brain, throw out questions and answers, suspend here and everywhere eternal float of solution. And I've got to skip a little bit. Consider you who peruse me. We're the ones perusing him, whether I may not in unknown ways be looking upon you. So it's like, hi, Walt, you're watching us. Be firm, rail over the river, fly on seabirds, receive the summer sky, diverge, find spokes of light from the shape of my head or anyone's head in the sunlit water, which is to say, what? We're all in this, secular ecstasy. We're all blessed beings. Come on, ships from the lower bay. And then he starts talking about appearances. So all these things in reality are appearances. That is, they indicate something beyond them, which the poem is going to gesture toward. Appearances now or henceforth indicate what you are. And just the last stanza, you have waited, you always wait, you dumb, beautiful ministers. My students always thought that dumb meant stupid, but it doesn't, it means silent. You dumb, beautiful ministers. These ministers are what things that administer to us, things that give us the reality that we exist in. We receive you with free sense at last and are insatiate henceforward. Not you anymore shall be able to foil us or withhold yourselves from us. We use you and do not cast you aside. We plant you permanently within us. We fathom you not. We love you. There is perfection in you also. You furnish your part toward eternity, great or small. You furnish your parts toward the soul. I think of Keats in a letter. He says, the world is a veil of soul making. It's not just a veil of sorrow, it's a veil of soul making. And Whitman shares that, capital R romantic idea that the things, the phenomena of the world can be apprehended, can be loved and imagined in a way that constitutes the making of a soul. You furnish your parts toward the soul. So this poem, which a beautiful praise poem, it doesn't end up saying we have the answers, but it says what all of time is participant, all the beings in time participate in each other's existences. Just as he looks forward toward us, we look back toward him through the agency of the poem and through the phenomena of the world. So, any really quick comments on that before I zoom ahead to the poem I love even more, which is Out of the Cradle? Okay, I'm going to
One
zoom in.
one simple contact is just how much it helps your narration as you go through the poem, and then his point of view goes here, and his point of view goes here, and a lot of that I just got confused.
Well, I must have read the poem 60 times by now. So, and I took classes, undergrad, graduate, So I'm supposed to know more than you do about Whitman. I figured it would be pretty pathetic. And I also taught Whitman a bunch of times. Every time you teach American poetry, you got to teach Whitman. I'm going to read you all of, oh, yes, Barry.
One thing, I had an experience that we recalled as I was reading this poem. I was up in Washington for a family reunion with my late wife Paula's family, and I was taking ferry rides around the islands. And I had been going up to Washington since the late 60s and ridden those same ferries. And when my kids were very small, and now my kids are adults, and there we were riding those same ferry boats. And I thought about the timeless aspect of that here are people coming on those boats just like the way we did 10, 20, 30, 40
Yeah,
years ago. And it really, I had that same feeling reading this poem.
that's so great. So this is the poem for you. Okay, Out of the Cradle, Endlessly Rocking is my single favorite Whitman poem. And I think it is superbly beautiful and moving. It is his account of the origin of the poet, the birth of the poet. So I'm going to read you the whole thing and just listen to it. It's just gorgeous. Out of the cradle, endlessly rocking. Out of the cradle, endlessly rocking. Out of the mockingbird's throat, the musical shuttle. Out of the ninth month, midnight. Over the sterile sands and the fields beyond, where the child, leaving his bed, wandered alone, bareheaded, barefoot, down from the showered halo, up from the mystic play of shadows twining and twisting as if they were alive, out from the patches of briars and blackberries, from the memories of the bird that chanted to me, from your memories, sad brother, from the fitful risings and fallings I heard, from under that yellow half moon, late risen and swollen as if with tears, from those beginning notes of yearning and love there in the mist, from the thousand responses of my heart, never to cease, from the myriad thence aroused words, from the words stronger and more delicious than any, from such as now they start the scene revisiting as a flock, twittering, rising, or overhead passing, borne hither ere all eludes me hurriedly, a man, yet by these tears a little boy again, throwing myself on the sand, confronting the waves, I, chanter of pains and joys, uniter of here and hereafter, taking all hints to use them, but swiftly leaping beyond them, a reminiscence sing. Once, Pomanak, when the lilac scent was in the air and fifth month grass was growing, up the seashore in some briars, two feathered guests from Alabama, two together, and their nest, and four light green eggs spotted with brown, and every day the he-bird to and fro near at hand, and every day the she-bird crouched on her nest, silent with bright eyes, and every day I, a curious boy, never too close, never disturbing them, cautiously peering, absorbing, translating, shine, 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 Pour down your warmth, great sun, while we bask, we two together, winds blow south or winds blow north, day come white or night come black, home or rivers and mountains from home, singing all time, minding no time, while we two keep together, till of a sudden may be killed, unknown to her mate. One forenoon the she-bird crouched not on the nest, nor returned that afternoon, nor the next, nor ever appeared again. And thenceforward all summer in the sound of the sea, and at night under the full of the moon in calmer weather, over the hoarse surging of the sea, or flitting from briar to briar by day, I heard at intervals the remaining one, the he-bird, the solitary guest from Alabama. Blow, 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 blow up sea winds along Paumanok shore. I wait and I wait till you blow my mate to me. Yes, when the stars glistened all night long on the prong of a moss-scalloped stake, down almost amid the slapping waves sat the lone singer, wonderful, causing tears. He called on his mate. He poured forth the meanings which I of all men know. Yes, my brother, I know. The rest might not, but I have treasured every note. For more than once dimly down to the beach gliding, silent, avoiding the moonbeams, blending myself with the shadows, recalling now the obscure shapes, the echoes, the sounds and sights after their sorts, the white arms out in the breakers tirelessly tossing, I with bare feet, a child, the wind wafting my hair, listened long and long. Listen to keep, to sing, now translating the notes, following you, my brother. Soothe, soothe, soothe. Close on its wave soothes the wave behind, and again another behind, embracing and lapping, everyone close. But my love soothes not me, not me. Low hangs the moon. It rose late. It is lagging. Oh, I think it is heavy with love, with love. Oh, madly the sea pushes upon the land with love, with love. Oh, night, do I not see my love fluttering out among the breakers? What is that little black thing I see there in the white? Loud, 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 I call to you, my love. High and clear, I shoot my voice over the waves. Surely you must know who is here, is here. You must know who I am, my love. Low hanging moon, what is that dusky spot in your brown yellow? Oh, it is the shape of my mate. Oh, moon, do not keep her from me any longer. Land, land, oh, land. Whichever way I turn, oh, I think you could give me my mate back again if you only would, for I'm almost sure I see her dimly, whichever way I look. Oh, rising stars, perhaps the one I want so much will rise with some of you. Oh, throat, oh, trembling throat, sound clearer through the atmosphere, pierce the woods, the earth, somewhere listening to catch you must be the one I want. Shake out carols, solitary here, the night's carols, carols of lonesome love, death's carols, carols under that lagging, yellow, waning moon. Oh, under that moon where she droops almost down into the sea. Oh, reckless, despairing carols. But soft, sink low, soft. Let me just murmur. And do you wait a moment, you husky noise see? For somewhere I believe I heard my mate responding to me, so faint, I must be still to listen, but not altogether still, for then she might not come immediately to me. Hither, my love, here I am, here. With this just, sustained note, I announce myself to you. This gentle call is for you, my love, for you. Do not be decoyed elsewhere. That's the whistle of the wind. It's not my voice. That is the fluttering of the spray. Those are the shadows of leaves. Oh, darkness. Oh, in vain. Oh, I'm very sick and sorrowful. Oh, brown halo in the sky near the moon, drooping upon the sea. Oh, troubled reflection in the sea. Oh, throat. Oh, throbbing heart. And I think singing uselessly, uselessly, all the night. Oh, past. Oh, happy life. Oh, songs of joy. In the air, in the woods, over fields, loved, 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 loved. But my mate no more, no more with me. We two together no more. The aria sinking, all else continuing, the stars shining, the winds blowing, the notes of the bird continuous echoing, with angry moans, the fierce old mother incessantly moaning on the sands of Pominock's shore, gray and rustling, the yellow half moon enlarged, sagging down, drooping, the face of the sea almost touching, the boy ecstatic, with his bare feet, the waves, with his hair, the atmosphere dallying, the love in the heart long pent, now loose, now at last tumultuously bursting, the aria's meaning, the ears, the soul swiftly depositing, the strange tears down the cheeks coursing, the colloquy there, the trio, each uttering the undertone, the savage old mother incessantly crying to the boy's soul's questions, sullenly timing some drowned, secret hissing to the outsetting Bart. Demon or birds, said the boy's soul, is it indeed toward your mate you sing, or is it really to me? For I that was a child, my tongue is used sleeping. Now I've heard you. Now in a moment I know what I'm for. I awake, and already 1,000 singers, 1,000 songs clearer, louder, and more sorrowful than yours. 1,000 warbling echoes have started to life within me, never to die. Oh, you singers solitary, singing by yourself, projecting me. Oh, solitary me listening. Nevermore shall I cease perpetuating you. Nevermore shall I escape. Nevermore the reverberations. Nevermore the cries of unsatisfied love be absent from me. Never again leave me to be the peaceful child I was before what there in the night, by the sea, under the yellow and sagging moon, the messenger there aroused, the fire, the sweet hell within, the unknown want, the destiny of me. Oh, give me the clue. It lurks in the night here somewhere. Oh, if I am to have so much, let me have more. A word then, for I will conquer it. The word final, superior to all, subtle, sent up. What is it? I listen. Are you whispering it and have been all the time, you sea waves? Is that it from your liquid rims and wet sands? Where to answering? The sea, delaying not, hurrying not, whispered me through the night and very plainly before daybreak, lisped to me the low and delicious word death, and again death, 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 hissing melodious, neither like the bird nor like my aroused child's heart, but edging near as privately for me, rustling at my feet, creeping thence steadily up to my ears and laving me softly all over death, 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 which I do not forget, but fuse the song of my dusky demon and brother that he sang to me in the moonlight on Pominock's gray beach, with 1,000 responsive songs at random, my own songs awaked from that hour, and with them the key, the word up from the waves, the word of the sweetest song and all songs, that strong and delicious word which creeping to my feet, or like some old crone rocking the cradle, swathed in sweet garments, bending aside, the sea whispered me. So thank you for listening to it. So just some things to say about this. First of all, the rhythm of it. The rhythm of it is just amazingly beautiful. He's got the image of the sea as a cradle, the sea as a mother. I mentioned before the image of ourselves as struck from the float. And here is the float. And here's the boy who's been struck from that float, wandering on the shores of Long Island. That's what Paumanok is, right? And wandering alone at night and hearing these little birds, first of all, happy, the two little guests from Alabama, the little mockingbirds, first of all, happy, and then this original rupture. So, this is a poem about an original rupture, an original loss, which is not just the death of a little bird, but a fate that we're cast into where we are bereft, where we have lost, and he can't really name it what it could be, but it's signified and symbolized by the loss of this little bird for the bird's mate. Another thing to say about this, I mentioned last time how much Whitman loved opera. The whole bird's song is an aria, and that's the bird talking to you in the italics, right? Whitman says, I'm translating, I'm listening, I'm translating, I'm taking the meaning of this bird song as the bird song shoots out over the waves. And obviously, Whitman is projecting mightily here. He knows that the she-bird is missing, and he projects to imagine that the he-bird song is like this carol of love, this carol of loss, shooting out over the waves of the ocean, over the waves of time, over infinite space, looking to find a response, looking to find a mate. Now, obviously, we can bring this back to a human situation where in this poem, Whitman's argument is that the source of poetry is loss. In Song of Myself, it's something closer to the source of poetry is ebullience or plenitude or little d democracy or, you know, amazement. Here, just a few years later, and this is obviously not his final mood, but it is a powerful mood, that the source of poetry is loss, is rupture, is loneliness, right? And Calvin Bediant, who's a scholar, wrote what I think is a really interesting essay about this poem. And he talks about the abject sublime. So the sublime, the concept of the sublime is something that began with Longinus, who wrote a book or an essay, a treatise on the sublime in the first century AD, although it's not certain that he did. And he argues that the sublime is something that makes us sense loftiness and grandeur. This was picked up later by people like Edmund Burke and Immanuel Kant to distinguish the sublime from the merely beautiful. Kant says, just to move really quickly, the beautiful has limitations, the beautiful has edges. The sublime is boundless. The sublime awakens both our sense of awe and our sense, in a sense, of terror or fear. The sublime carries us out of ourselves, both to sense our 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 greatness in a sense, and to sense our absolute littleness. So, if you know the paintings of Caspar David Friedrich, which I love, where this guy's standing at the edge of a precipice in the Alps and there's like clouds all around him, and he's very little, and the Alps are very, very big, and that gives you a sense of sublimity. A sense of sublimity is what this poem is evoking in the poet's story of the boy faced with the enormity of song, the enormity of loss, the enormity of the beauty, the enormity of death. But Calvin Bedient talks about, he says, and I think this is an interesting argument. He says, this poem not only awakens in us a sense of sublimity, but also a sense of abjection, a sense of our own helplessness, our sense of our own, physical helplessness, right? And that they're together. It's a new kind of sublimity, which takes us down rather than soaring us into the atmosphere. So you've got, I mean, there's just so much to say about this poem, but it's the imaginative projection into the bird's song expressing this love, expressing this hopefulness, the bird's song talking to the moon, talking to the ocean, talking to the stars, talking to the night, and then finally giving up. Oh, I am very sorrowful, just giving up. And then the boy says, demon or bird. And he's not using demon like, devil. The demon is that energetic force. It's like, in a sense, what Lorca calls the duende. It's that spirit that drives the poet, the muse, and it's not a kindly spirit. It's a spirit, as Lorca says, that makes the flamenco singer break his voice. So it rides the artist. It forces itself through the artist. Demon or bird, says the poet. Is it indeed toward your mates you sing, or is it really to me? Right? So he's internalizing this song and he's saying, okay, this is in a sense the awakening of his own muse, the awakening of his own acknowledgement of this hunger that's going to drive him into poetry, right? I that was a child, my tongue's used sleeping. Now I've heard you. Now 1,000 singers, 1,000 songs, 1,000 warbling echoes have started to life within me. Nevermore shall I escape. I'm doomed. I'm caught. I'm bit by the bug. The messenger there aroused the fire, the sweet hell within, the unknown want, the destiny of me. A word then, and he says, give me a clue. You've given me so much. Let me have the final answer. And here the final answer is what the sea is singing, what the mother sea is singing, death. Which is to say, if we're struck from the float, the only way to escape that struckness is to return to the float, is death. And notice what Whitman does. He does what Shakespeare does, which is really hard to read aloud, which is repeat the same word 5 times in a row. In Lear, never, 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 never. Here, loved, 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 loved. And then twice, death, 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 which, takes a kind of amazing courage as a poet, recklessness as a poet to be able to write with that kind of heightened and gorgeous rhetoric, you know? So the song, which is this poem, just like the aria, kind of touches down where it began, touches down by the sea still rocking the cradle, the sea still swathed in sweet garments, bending aside, the sea whispered me. So I kind of zoomed through that really fast, but I'd love to have time to have you guys talk about it. This poem, some people, when Whitman first wrote it, some people loved it. Algernon Swinburne, the British poet, said he hadn't encountered such an amazing poem for many years. One person, I've been reading Justin Kaplan's really amazing biography of Whitman, and one of the early listeners to it said, this is a bunch of drivel. So, it's like opinions are always divided about Whitman. But I would love to hear you talk about it a little bit. Have questions or comments?
Oh, somebody say something.
Could be you, Tony.
Say
Well,
something.
I just did. I was just poking people.
No, I think that it's interesting how much, but he grew up in Long Island, and how much this is imbued in his sense of the sea and that flow and the float and so much of the imagery comes from that. Um, and both the the repetition and the motion of the ocean, which people around we know about, but also the sense that you can always hear, and there's sometimes this way out there. There's so much imagery in here that talks about kind of his that the environment is really very strong here to me, at least. And the imagery.
Oh yeah, it's all encompassing. Sure, absolutely. And
I,
go ahead.
I lived on Long Island for 6 years. I never knew that the original name of it was Paumanok, the indigenous name. That's where that word comes from. It's not, I had wondered if it was a place when I first saw the poem, or some town or something, but no, it was the name. And I think it's the whole, it he's a part of a place and a time as well, more than in the first poem, which is more expansive. This is very grounded, and it's grounded in how he grew up and
Mhm.
where he grew up, and it's very evocative, and I, I I could I could sort of, well, besides the sadness of it, there's this sense of really being mindful of being of the places and creatures around him, and the sort of sensitivity as a child that he portrays.
Yeah.
I think a lot of small boys at that time would have been out there, collecting birds' eggs or something, and the kind of sensitivity that he portrays to the place, the birds, the sea. It's very moving, and it really, when I read it, a lot of the imagery of the places that were probably still kind of the same when I lived there, um, came back, and well, Brooklyn, is farther in, but still, I think he must have spent time. He had a sister who lived farther out, and so I think he spent time in different places, and it's 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 as if being in a particular place between the little meadow and the sea opened his eyes to something wider, but it's really linked to this time and place in a way that I think was striking, and I love the poem. I'll just say that it was very beautiful.
I love
To
it
me,
so much. I just love it so much. Yeah.
to me, it's like the death of the bird is the birth of the poet.
Yeah.
At the very end is my own songs awakened from that hour,
Yeah.
and that it's that sense of loss. So it builds sort of beautifully toward that.
Yeah. That original loss. Yeah. A loss of something ever felt I is one of Emily Dickinson's great first lines, you know, and this is like that too. I mean, obviously the poet has to be vulnerable to that to begin with, and this is part of the later edition, 1860 edition, in which a new note of troubledness or darkness, kind of difficult love enters some of the poems. Whitman starts writing more about this desire to make contact with people, especially with men, that is only partially realizable, and as he did in the earlier poem, talking in a kind of veiled way about some of his untroubledness, So this is coming from that sense of darkening, that sense of longing, not quite so full of bravado, still full of this enormous rhetorical passion that we see also in Song of Myself, this enormous daring with language, just to be able to drive. And one thing I love so much about this poem is the incredible rhythms of it. Da 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 da. It's like if you're going to write about the ocean, you better be able to sound like the ocean, you know? And he really does that all the way through, where the human voices and then the aria of the bird just kind of modulating, changing, stopping, starting, these high piercing notes, these beautiful melodies. It's just such a daring poem, aesthetically speaking, such a such a kind of risky and brilliant poem, aesthetically speaking. It's so full of vulnerability, so full of passion.
I had never read this poem before, and it it helped me, I think, have a different attitude toward Whitman. I mean, when you use that word daring, I've always had an ambivalent kind of response to Whitman because, like, first encountering him in Leaves of Grass, he came across to me as just too arrogant, too full of himself, too proud, too, and I think daring is the right word. And in this poem, he presents this story of himself becoming a poet that I guess is really persuasive to me. I mean that he um, and perhaps this is a literal event, an encounter that he had with these birds on this seashore in this place, and that he was so moved by it over this period of days while he was coming down and observing the birds, and then suddenly one of them is gone, that it filled him with such um, powerful emotions that he kind of knew from that early moment that he was destined to be a poet, that his life was about observing, feeling, and communicating these deep feelings which he felt connected him with all human beings, but not only that, with all life and all time. And, when I first encountered him, I thought, how can anybody be that arrogant to believe that they're just sort of uniquely in touch with all the great themes? Um, but, you know, I, on the other hand, it really transports me to those places. So I think I shouldn't uh, I should simply go with the flow and not criticize or wonder, does one individual have the right to assert these things with such confidence?
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, he's got this great imaginative extension of the self. One thing that's interesting here is that it's not about other people. It's about him and a little bird. And so he's not saying, I too did this, and so you do this, and so on. This is just like, this is what happened to me. He said that it was based on a real experience. But at the same time, we have to realize, as Rimbaud says, je et un autre, which means I am an other. Anytime you say the word I, and especially if you're writing, you're creating a persona. You're creating something that is different from the actual this sitting here in the flesh. So this is it's not a roman, but it's a Künstlerroman. It's a Künstler poem. It's a poem about the birth of the artist.
So, Anne, I I found myself really reacting to this strongly on a personal level because of the song of the bird and the loss of a mate. But also thinking that he's writing this poem, that Wordsworth said, the child is the father of the man. So he's writing this poem as a man, attributing to himself as a child some understanding that maybe he remembers the incident, but he's gradually figured out what that incident meant to him as he started equating his own longing for love. I mean, we've got two different longings for love here. You've got one where you've had the love and it's gone, and the other one where you haven't had the love yet because maybe it's so difficult in his case to, this feeling is growing in him. So he's sort of equating these two, but going back to the answer being death, it's sort of more like being reabsorbed by the float, which I love. I'm so glad you explained the float because I wasn't sure about that. But just this idea that you come out of this nothingness into being, and it's sort of reassuring to me, anyway, that you get to go back to this sea of all of these atoms and minerals and everything, maybe to be used again. Who knows?
Yeah.
But um, but it's, I mean, because this is not a sad thing for him to discover that the song of the sea is these waves of death, and the cradle is endlessly rocking. New things are emerging all the time, and then they're being subsumed back in. So I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, part of you say he hasn't had that love. That's part of what's going on here. Part of what's going on here, I think, is more originary. It's that all humans, if we think about it, feel, or I'm not going to say all humans, but in my experience, many, many, many humans, if we think about it, if we're introspective, we feel a loss of something, you know. We feel a loss of union or a loss of connection or something like that. Um, and the child, of course, is in a state where he hasn't yet become conscious of that, hasn't yet internalized that. But this is about that transitional moment when that you can never be that child again. Yeah, great.
And what about his use of the word brother in the poem? I was wondering whether when he talks about my brother, if he's referring to the bird, but is he also referring to his literal personal brother growing up? I know it's brother, he had two brothers, and one was taken captive during the Civil War. One of them seemed to become an alcoholic and have a sad life. Um, do you have any thoughts about that word?
Well, I think in this poem, it's just the bird, just like I think the mother is the sea. But of course,
Couldn't it also be, I think that's also the same wording almost in Keats with Ode to a Nightingale. Doesn't he call the bird a demon?
yeah, does he? Oh,
He
he
doesn't
doesn't.
call it that, but it's
It's like
feels
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be really interesting. Somebody needs to write a book about birds in poetry through the ages because birds are really important to poets, and they do all kinds of things. And Peter pointed out that Poe uses, what's the phrase that he uses?
in the Raven. He says, "Prophet said I, thing of evil. Prophet still, if bird or devil." And Whitman appreciated Poe, and I think there may be a slight echo there. But of course, he doesn't mean devil when he says demon.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments on this?
Sounds like a book for you, Anne, about birds.
I've had enough of writing scholarly stuff. Let me tell
Really?
you. Oh my God, yeah.
You're retired?
Well, I'm busy as heck, but I don't want to write scholarly treatises
Okay.
or
Well, it could be poetic.
yeah, I know. Birds I have known, you
Yeah,
know.
birds I have known, and you could be uh, referring or quoting some of your favorite birds in poetry.
Oh, there's so many birds in
That's
poetry.
probably a
Very,
terrible idea for a poem, but
yeah. Yeah, Barry.
I thought that that phrase Alan used of go with the flow really spoke to me about the way it feels like to read this poetry. I noticed that on Song of Myself also, that it was more satisfying to just go with his flow of language, not to try to figure out what he's talking about always or the meaning, but just almost like you would perceive a piece of music. Just let it flow over you and flow with it. It's I think that really made it much more enjoyable for me to read.
Yeah, see, that's the really important thing to remember about any poetry is that you don't need to figure it out right away. You know, we live in a culture where it's very much based on figuring things out and knowing the answer. Poetry is an experience. It's not like a logical proposition, and it's not like a math problem. So, yeah, going with the flow of any poem. And when we get to Dickinson, it's a very different kind of flow. It's a jagged ride. But and the other really important thing to know about poetry is you have to reread. It's like the first time through, it's like a foreign language. If it's really, I mean, there's some poetry that's very accessible on the first read, but many poems, the first time through, you're like, what the heck? What? You know? Be patient with yourself. I always tell students, start with a part that you feel like you do understand. That can maybe be two-thirds of the way through, and you're like, oh, okay, this is really cool. And then kind of work forward, work backward, you know, but reread, read out loud. Do what Yeats did, which is read as you walk around, you know. Just embody it in your body, literally embody it in your body, because poetry is a very, very visceral art.
It's interesting. I've been reading this biography of Whitman, inspired by it last week, and reading how other poets responded to Whitman is sort of interesting because some of them made this point of, I had to read this poem many times or something, or more than once. And I think that you have a sense of a more leisurely life. They're, they're not, and they don't have the sense from watching television or YouTube videos or something of, as you say, wanting to get everything instantly. There is a taking time to absorb and reflect on. I guess another thing that struck me here is that the real contrast between the very urban and people-oriented first poem, the crossing to Brooklyn, and then the this is very a little micro world that's,
Yeah.
as far as you could tell reading it, the city didn't even exist. This could have been written about Long Island, 500 years before Whitman. This,
Yeah.
this whole poem could have taken place. And so there's a kind of timelessness about it that's very different. Timelessness in one place, and then the the first poem is just is a complete opposite. It's as if his whole mood is
Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I wondered I wondered how he would have responded to the Brooklyn Bridge when it was built, and the people the first day it was open and people could walk back and forth across it. And I believe my grandmother did that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly when it was. That might not be, but maybe they had a day years later when she was a child, because she had walked across it, I believe. But
That's really
the,
cool.
I can imagine
1883.
what people who had taken the ferry all this time, and then suddenly they're walking back and forth, where Whitman had envisioned only a boat ride. It's a whole different thing to walk across or take a horse drawn carriage across a bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this guy named Alan Trachtenberg wrote a whole book about the Brooklyn Bridge. Pretty interesting book, sort of American cultural history. I will tell you one sad thing. I taught this poem at Scripps, and my Scripps students said that they would never walk on the beach alone at night. You know, that really made me sad. I'm like, oh my God, what a world, to be unwilling, rightfully so, to have this kind of experience of solitude and mystery and power, you know. Well, thank you guys. Next week, we're going to talk about Whitman's great elegy for Lincoln, When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloomed. And I'm also going to send you some of the short poems from Drum Taps. I mentioned that Whitman's brother was injured at Fredericksburg, and Whitman went down, as family members would do, to help take care of and see how badly his brother was wounded. Turned out his brother had only a cut on his face. His brother said, "I was the luckiest person in the war, you know." But Whitman was so overwhelmed by what he saw in this field camp, piles of amputated limbs, people screaming and groaning, amputations without anesthetic, stomach wounds that turned, what's the word I want? Septic, yeah. And people took forever to die. So Whitman didn't go back to New York after that. He went to DC and spent the rest of the war doing his journalism and his social events and so on, but also visiting the field hospital that had been set up in the patent office and helping, like holding the bucket while somebody performed an amputation, writing letters home. Apparently, after the Civil War, there was a bunch of babies born that were named Walter because the fathers of these babies had survived Whitman's tender care in this hospital and returned home.
In addition to tender care, he persuaded surgeons not to amputate limbs in a number of cases where it wasn't necessary,
Oh, well,
but
that's
they
good.
amputated like mad.
That's good.
At least one soldier said, Whitman saved this arm or this leg for me.
That's great. That's great. And he would bring fruit and he would bring stamps and he would write letters and just, be there. I read Anthony Trollope visited one of the field hospitals and promptly fainted. It's like it was such a horrifying scene. But Whitman, he just responded with infinite compassion and infinite tenderness to this scene of great suffering. And he also adored and revered Abraham Lincoln. So we're going to talk about this elegy for Lincoln and then talk about some of the short Drum Taps poems. And then we'll move on to Whitman's great contemporary, Emily Dickinson. Okay?
Sounds
Thanks for
good.
being here. Have a
Thank
good
you, Anne.
week.
It's great.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks
Thanks,
again.
Ann.
You are very welcome. Have a good week. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anne.